And hello everyone, welcome to 15 Minutes. I'm Andrew Huff. I am pleased to announce my guest today as a prominent figure in King County and Seattle for a number of years in government and public affairs. First in the media as a reporter for the Seattle Times and King 5 News. He's ran his government affairs and public relations company for a number of years. He's also worked for some elected officials such as former Governor Gary Locke, and now he's just been elected the latest King County assessor. I'm talking about none other than John Arthur Wilson. Mr. Wilson, thank you for being here today.
Good to see you, Andrew.
Congratulations on your election.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
You have been involved in public affairs, government, public policy for a number of years. What moment in your life did you realize that this was something that you truly had an interest in?
Well, in terms of running for elective office, I think that's something obviously that has kind of come late in my career. I historically, probably for the last 20 years or more, have been somebody that was kind of behind the scenes and that. So election night, admittedly, for me was kind of an odd experience that when the Seattle Times called and asked for a comment, I had to say, okay, who's going to comment? And I went, oh, it's me. But I think about, 2-3 years ago, I looked and, I'd been in and out of government, had made some great strides when I was the deputy assessor. And I determined, frankly, that if we were going to take the department to the next level and truly serve taxpayers the way I thought the office should be, it was going to need some new leadership, and that I need to either stand up or shut up, and I decided to stand up.
Now, early on in your career, you were involved in the media as a producer, as a reporter. Over the last several years, you've seen this region change dramatically as a reporter and someone in the media. In a general sense, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen to this region over the last 25 years, say?
You mean in terms of media or in terms of the region?
Just the region in general. What have you seen? What are the biggest changes that you've seen?
I think we have become clearly a global community. There was always a foothold of that with Boeing, but I think Starbucks, Amazon, Microsoft, a host of companies have really made Seattle into a global city and King County into a global region. And with that has come some challenges. I think some of it is that to some extent some of our corporations have found that they've sort of lost the local identity or struggled to figure out how to express that. I think also we see the growing pains that comes from a region that is truly a magnet around the world for very talented people to come and want to live and work and play here. And we can understand that, but I think it also creates some tensions with those of us, and I encountered a lot of those folks while I was out campaigning who have lived here for decades and go, hey, what's happened to my region?
Over the last 25 years or so, we've seen an influx of wealth in this region, both with the tech industry and other industries as well. The amount of money in this region, both individually and being held by companies, is rather astounding. How is the influx of that amount of wealth in the region, how has that changed the way we live and work in this area?
Well, I think it's, on the one hand, opened up a lot of opportunities that didn't exist before. It to some degree has taken some of the cyclical nature of the economy out that used to be when we were an economy more based on natural resources. At the same time, it's created some equity and social justice issues about income disparity between those who are very wealthy and those who are not. And it's, again, part of the struggle I think we have of how do we keep the region in balance? Right. Certainly coming back to the assessor's realm, you need no more visual element of that than look at what's happening to housing in our region and seeing the way that housing prices have again now taken off and the affordability crisis that's created for literally thousands and thousands of county residents.
That's a good point. It reminds me of an article in the Business Journal about how many foreign investors will purchase real estate in the region, in King County and beyond. Simply, not just because they simply want to live here, but because it's just a safe place to put their money. You see a lot of people from Asia simply buying houses here, not that because they want to live here, but it's just a safe place to put their money.
Well, exactly, and it's interesting. I was talking to somebody about this the other night, is that, of the three major West Coast cities, if you will, of no offense to Los Angeles, but San Francisco, Seattle, and Vancouver, you can see that both San Francisco and Vancouver have been, if you will, a little bit ahead of us in that influx of money coming in from overseas. Both of them have paid a price for that, though. That they've both gone through almost sort of hyperinflation in terms of real estate values and affordability. That's been a real struggle for each of them to reach. We now see ourselves sort of at that precipice where I think part of our challenge as a community is how do we respond to that? You know, we don't want on the one hand, you know, put up a global billboard akin to the old Boeing one of well, the last one out, please shut off the lights.
That's right.
But by the same token, what we've got to say is look, we've got to do this in a smart way. And certainly we've got enough smart people in this region, we should be able to figure that out. And I think you want to encourage international investment, but you also want to make sure that that international investment has some sensitivity to the local community and also some corporate responsibility to the local community to be a good citizen.
We have a lot of new workers coming into this area. Certainly Amazon and a number of other companies have been bringing in a lot of workers, and that has led, among other things, to continued challenges, shall we say, in our transportation system. As a reporter and other things that you've done in government affairs and policy work, why do you think that our region has just simply maybe been a little bit behind the ball when it comes to putting together an efficient, multimodal transportation system? Why have we maybe been a little bit behind in some of our other cities, such as Portland, for example?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's several things. Some of it goes with sort of a strong sense of individualism that I think we have in Washington State and in the region here. Some of it is that sadly we really missed the boat in literally the early 70s when, you know, former Senator Magnuson had teed up federal funds that would have been a 90 federal match to our 10%, and we narrowly turned it down. And you know, when I go occasionally to Atlanta, I like to wave at our subway system. But you can see that we've lagged in building a kind of coordinated infrastructure that we're starting now to get with Sound Transit and the regional bus and that. But it's meant that because growth has tended to outstrip our construction of that infrastructure, our freeways are often nothing more than parking lots. Buses fly past passengers because they're filled. And light rail is often packed but doesn't go nearly as far as I think many of us realize it really needs to go. And that's going to be one of our challenges over these next 20 years is how do we build out transportation infrastructure to both hopefully somewhat more keep pace with the level of growth and how to also in turn, and coming back to housing, how do we infill smartly around transit? This is one of the things that I've been interested in. One of the issues I worked on when I worked for King County Executive Ron Sims was transit-oriented development.
Right.
I'm a living personal story of that in that the Sound Transit station now being built in the Roosevelt District is this far from my house. We are literally next door to it. And let me tell you, it's a lot of fun to have them drill a tunnel under your house.
Sure.
But the fact is that neighborhoods like Roosevelt and scores of others of them in King County need both mass transit and they need that kind of transit-oriented development that should smartly come with it.
It seems like a lot of people want to be able to live, work, play, travel, all in the same area. So I think that maybe goes hand in hand with this transit-oriented development where it's a transit hub, but with that comes other development, restaurants, shops, places that you can spend more time around your home without having to go, say, downtown or other areas.
I think that's true. I also think that fundamentally the American relationship with the automobile is changing, and certainly among millennials and others. You look at the success of Zipcar and Car2Go and other companies that are looking to get in that space, where you find increasingly people that they want to either live in walking distance to work, mass transit distance to work, or they no longer even own a car, and they're going to rely upon a car share program to provide one when they need it. And that's going to affect property values, how we grow, how we should grow, how we account for transportation options and things like that.
Let me ask you about the Boeing company. You worked closely with former Governor Gary Locke in putting together a strategy to make sure that Boeing manufactures the Dreamliner 787 in this state. How important was that to this region economically for Boeing to make sure that they build that airplane here?
I think it was absolutely vital to the economic well-being of the region. I think if Boeing had opted to build the Dreamliner elsewhere, we would be in a far different economic state than we are today. You know, part of what you recognized, and when I worked on this project for Governor Locke, was the amazing multiplier effect that Boeing has on local jobs. You know, God bless Starbucks, but the multiplier effect of how many double tall non-fat lattes I can have is limited, although not to my waistline apparently. But the fact is that, you know, it is one thing where globally we had a point of distinction to make as a community, that we were a global center for aerospace excellence. And I think we all recognized when we were working on that project that it was just way too important not to succeed.
Obviously, housing is an even bigger issue for you now with your new position. And that's another challenge that you're dealing with. I think comes a growing population, comes these challenges, and one of them is housing. The answer apparently seems to be not just more houses, but density, putting more and more people, or the ability to live in larger numbers in a smaller area. Is increasing our density, our housing density, a critical element of making sure that there is available housing?
I think it is, but I think it's also important that it goes beyond just density. It goes to smart density. How do we grow gracefully? And that's part of why we've proposed what we were calling an affordable housing tax exemption. Because part of what we're seeing is absent something like this, the tendency is for developers, understandably, to come into a community, buy up a series of adjacent properties, tear them all down, and build up a new box. Some of those units may be affordable, but the fact is you have still a significant cost of new construction in that. The other side of this, though, that we've often lost sight of is that there are thousands of units and hundreds of buildings around the county, existing buildings that we could turn into affordable housing quickly by simply providing some kind of tax incentive to encourage small and mid-sized landlords and homeowners to open that. And that's a way for us to create density without feeling that you just have to tear things down. You know, when I was out campaigning, I was down in the Columbia City area, and I was talking to an elderly gentleman who was probably in his late 70s or that. He bought his home in the 60s, paid off the mortgage long since, raised his family in that. And he says, look, here's my problem. You know, I don't have a mortgage now, but my property taxes keep going up because what's happening in my neighborhood is they keep buying up my neighbors' properties, tearing them down and building up new apartments, and next thing I knew, my value's going up. We've got to figure out a way that we're not taxing people literally out of their homes. And that's one of the priorities I'll have as King County Assessor.
Yeah, you had mentioned that in your campaign, that one of the things you'd like to do is lobby the legislature to create some tax breaks for the elderly or people, and that's a very, very good example. Is that something that's still on your agenda?
It's not only still on it, we're already working on it. We've already started to draft legislation. We've had some initial discussions with various legislators. We'll be down in Limey bright and early in January to try to get that bill passed.
Very good. John Arthur Wilson, thank you for being our guest today.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us, everyone, and we hope you'll join us again for another 15 minutes. We'll see you soon.